thank you for joining Think, Build, Launch podcast. I am your host, Jennifer Sertl, the Community Director of Marl. Think, Build, Launch podcast is an extension of Marl Startup Studio, whose mission is to build a bridge between the Silicon Valley and Rochester, New York, to increase both economic inclusion and deal flow. Our primary objectives include supporting ideation and helping get organic ideas into a shareable structure, engaging Silicon Valley investors, optimizing the talent pool from the 19 universities and colleges within a 90-mile range to upstate New York, and also amplifying the robust Rochester startup ecosystem. It's great to have you here today. Today's guest is Yash Hemaraj, partner of Benhamou Global Ventures that invests in Enterprise 4.0 companies and cross-border innovation. He also heads up Arka Venture Labs, an accelerator platform from India that based on B2B companies. And actually on the podcast this morning, he is actually in India. I think it's 10 p.m. there, 10 a.m. In Rochester. So I really kind of love the fact that we've, really kind of have a global conversation today. Many of you probably have heard of Israel being called as a startup nation, and there is just so much positive momentum happening in India innovation. And for some of you that were at our very first Marl on Main, we brought Yash to Rochester last November in our program, and we're really happy to have him back on our show today. So welcome, Yash, and thank you for being here from India. This is really a really unique opportunity.
Thank you. It's my pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
That's great. So as you know, we are trying to build the bridge between Silicon Valley and upstate New York. And so building that bridge is 2,747 miles, and some would arguably say culturally diverse. However, you have built the ultimate bridge. You've built a bridge between countries that are almost 10,000 miles apart and explicitly culturally very diverse. How did you build that bridge? How's it going? And when did you start? And tell us about it.
So it all started back in 2017, when we started looking at India and, seeing kind of just the energy coming out of there, right? India is home for the world's probably youngest English literate, computer literate population in the world. And all of them had caught this entrepreneurship bug, right? And while India differs from a whole lot of other geographies because it has a very big domestic market, we saw an opportunity for India to actually build for the world, right? And it's not just run like copycat solutions, but actually real innovations coming out from India. And we saw that early seeds of that. And when you match that with the early adopter market that the US has, that's one key thing that the US brings to the innovation ecosystem, which is the early adopter market. Nowhere else in the world where, if you have a solution to a big problem, customers are ready to put their badge down and, give POCs and give those early contracts to companies, even if it is 3 or 4 people in the company. So that is what US brings, right? So we wanted to match that innovation ecosystem in India, which was still fledgling, to kind of, meet that early adopter customer in the US market. In that way, the entrepreneurs are building for where the global markets want, like, in terms of, high quality products. They're not selling to price sensitive customers, etc. So we wanted to do that matchmaking. And whenever you give a chance for entrepreneurs to innovate very closely with their customers, get that feedback and create that loop, that's where I think magic happens. So we wanted to facilitate that. And BGV, we have been investing since 2014 across Israel, France, and also some companies out of India. And we have built, like all of us being operators, have built a very extensive operational team. We also have built an extended technology advisory group, sales and marketing advisory group, customer advisory group, etc. So we wanted to do this, matchmaking and really help the companies coming out from India build very innovative solutions, right? So that's what gave us the motivation to do Arka Venture Labs. That got started in around 2018. We didn't have a great ground game in India. So we partnered with India's leading seed fund called Bloom Ventures and another cross-border fund called Emergent Ventures to kind of get the first fund off the ground. Today we have 32 companies. We already have 5 exits in the portfolio. Several of them have raised their subsequent round of financing. And most importantly, 6 companies have crossed $1 million ARR mark within very short interval of time. And that is giving us confidence to go big on this opportunity.
That's really remarkable. And usually when we release this, we'll also put it into a blog, and I'll be sure to reference those. I think your company recently had a report that showed some of those companies. If anyone wants to learn from, I thought that was really interesting that you can notice the difference between a copycat and real innovation. Can you give, I'm teaching a class right now at RIT, Exploring Innovation, and I think being able to tell the students how to spot the difference. Is there anything that you can teach us real quick on that?
So it comes down to kind of, 2 important aspects. One is the founding team's key insight into the market. That is irreplaceable, right? That's what separates a lot of people who are just wanting to be entrepreneurs. And we saw a lot of them in this era of 2020 to 2022, where money was easily flowing in, right? So we saw a lot of people who wanted to be entrepreneurs, who just wanted a break from, their regular, corporate jobs. And you really, in entrepreneurs who are kind of approaching the market like that, you don't really find that spark of innovation. But people who have really immersed themselves in the problem, who have really felt the problem at a deeper level, bring something magical in there. So that is a very important element to kind of creating this. Second thing is really founders who care a lot about differentiating, because even in the startup world, you take any industry vertical, right? Or any even sub vertical, there are many startups competing. And there are some people who can rise above the noise by telling the right story on how they differentiate from the rest of the market. So those are 2 very critical components that we look for. And finally, in today's world, there are a lot of tools available to entrepreneurs. AI has been democratized, workflow automation is there, and data is also available at a massive scale. So we like to see founders who are putting in AI, bringing the right data into those AI systems, and kind of embedding those innovations, those insights into everyday workflow. So we call this combination Enterprise 4.0, and we believe that creates a long sustainable moat for the new wave of enterprise companies coming out.
Wow, that's such a concrete answer. So for any of you that are afraid that if you share your idea, it will get stolen, what we heard here is that the ability to have real passion and insight, as well as contextual intelligence, is something that's going to make you stand out. So having an idea doesn't necessarily make it fundable, but the passion and experience and contextual intelligence certainly do that. Having had you come to Rochester, I like that you talked about being a matchmaker, and we certainly, did what we could to introduce you to Ain at University of Rochester, Upstate Venture Connect, Jim Sinal at NextCore, and really some of the, there are so many key players here in Rochester, but just a few we were able to introduce you to. What stood out for you in your experience? What do you think we're doing right? And what do we need to continue to do better to really strengthen this ecosystem and build this bridge?
Yeah, so I spoke during the event as well on this topic of it really takes a village, right? To kind of get this companies go up and running, right? So obviously it starts with a dynamic group of founders, and having so many universities there was a great thing to see, like students coming out of there, alumni coming out of there. So that was great to see. But in order to support them, you got to bring everybody together. I mean, that includes incubators, accelerators, service providers, and venture funds, and venture funds across all the different stages, like people who can write, initial checks when it's just the founder and an idea, to kind of, seed, Series A, Series B, and beyond. And that's what kind of, creates that ecosystem. And finally, important element of this, and it was great that you had a lot of the corporates also engaged with, their innovation arms or, their R&D teams, So if you bring all of them together and all of them are working on a single goal to kind of really help the founder community, I think that's where you can really see massive strides happen. And that's what I saw in Rochester as well when I was there.
That's really great. So when we had also Senator Jeremy Cooney and also Mayor Evans, so when you have governance, education, service providers, and then funders and founders and students, that sounds like that's the ecosystem you're talking about. That's the village. Did I get that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, in terms of it takes a village, I have actually, when you came and talked with us, you talked about the village of entrepreneurship in a community should strive to make it 10% easier for the founders. I'd love you to talk more about what you meant by that.
Yeah. So basically, when you look at a day-to-day job of an entrepreneur, right? At the end of the day, that's when you're building an ecosystem, they are the center of our universe, right? And the 10 things, I'm just using 10, but it could be 20, because really they are multitasking across so many different things. It could be things like just company incorporation. It could be, taking care of their employees. Sometimes even I see founders even doing payrolls and stuff, in those early days, right? They got to do their compliances. They got to do their taxes. So it's a bunch of stuff that they have to do, everything parallelly. They're understaffed, and they have to kind of, build something innovative and which can challenge an existing market, right? So it's a very tough job. And my goal towards this, and that's the approach that we have taken even at Arka and the India-US cross-border ecosystem as well, is, when you focus on the top 10 things that they need to do, and you make each of those 10% easier, right? Suddenly there is a compounding effect. So now you have made the job of the entrepreneur 2.5 times easier, right? And on the other hand, if the job is 10% more difficult, let's say, it becomes just a little bit more difficult to do certain things, there is a compounding effect in that one as well. So in fact, that's what distinguishes communities that have been able to do very, very well and communities that have had the right vision, but they have struggled, right? There is a very huge compounding effect there. And that's what I strive to do. And that's what and I was talking about during the talk is, if you can make everything 10% easier, now you have made the job 2.5 times easier. Now they have that much of time free to focus on what is most important, which is building a company, creating a differentiated moat for the company, challenging the incumbents in whatever market they are in. So that's more time for that.
So, and any of you service providers listening to this, you need to change your pitch from what you can do to actually how you can help. That is what I'm thinking right now. Many VCs are about the numbers and the dashboard, and you have a very unique point of view about the founder journey. Can you talk about that?
When it comes to like the founder journey, right? I particularly was talking about that when it comes to identifying entrepreneurs who are not in it just for the reason of building a company, right? You really need to identify where is that underlying passion that is coming from. And when you look at some of the investments that I have made in the past, those are the journeys, that experiences that the founders have built, which really kind of, gets me to go from, hey, this is a nice, interesting concept. There is a pain point, and it is interesting to invest, to here is a check and I'm going to invest in that jump. It's the founder's personal journey or the founder's personal experiences that gets me to kind of do that. There are a lot of experiences. There is a founder who I backed. I wrote the first check in that company. It's in the cloud infrastructure space. And in that particular case, the founder had gone through a startup before, and he had really had a lot of black swan events hurt the company, right? And because of that, he had to kind of shut down his previous company. But he came to me with a new concept, very powerful macro trends that he had identified that he could bring his previous experience and really disrupt the way the infrastructure is offered to a new wave of developers, right? And I think that was a critical aspect for me, because, having been in that ecosystem, I knew the macro trends, but I also knew that, the founder's previous experience of having gone through a journey, having suffered through some uncontrollables that affected his previous startup, knows how to kind of, gives him that kind of that experience to deal with adversities, right? And I gave him the first check, and today it has been a leader in the cloud distributed edge computing space, right? So those type of experiences are irreplaceable, and that's what I kind of try to look for. So that's what I was referring to with respect to the founder experiences.
So it sounds like the authenticity, like the reason that you've been able to choose those 32 companies that are doing quite well is probably because you're really able to see, however you have a filter, it gets beyond the data into that resiliency, that passion, and that authenticity of the founder. And I don't think people talk enough about the founders as human beings. Founders as intelligent people, as rigorous people, as brave people, but not at the level of authenticity that I think you bring to the table, which I really appreciate. You've funded several seed companies, and some have been going on to do remarkable with follow-on funding and getting ready for their Series A and beyond. I would really love your perspective on 3 characteristics that you notice of teams that are really ready to go from being a seed stage to being more mature.
So in the early days, right, and this is kind of I'm taking this example from one of our dear service providers who kind of really helped help me understand that early on, which is in those early days, right? The founder is doing everything. The founder is doing sales. The founder is talking to customers, etc. And during that phase is where, like, the seed round of funding comes in, and as investors, we are trying to help the founder, think through, okay, and during these days, these are the challenges that you face, etc. The founder is building, probably has a co-founding team, has those early engineers, those early sales and marketing providers, but still the team is sub 10 people, right? But going to Series A, what we like to see is that transition. First, we like to see whether the founder is able to sell the product, right? Assuming that, the engineering team is able to build the product to a level where, it is production ready, meaning an enterprise of a decent size should be able to use that product without major issues. Issues are like customer bugs are always going to be there. I mean, we don't want the system to be bug free, but at least, there is a good amount of bugs being created and a few amount of bugs being solved, right? So the system is stable, but the founder is now able to sell it to the people who, we call it the early adopter market, right? Really, sell it to those, set of initial customers which fall into their ICP. ICP is ideal customer profile, right? It's a very clear definition of who their customers are. So we want to see that there is an ICP that exists. The founder is able to sell to that ICP. And again, we notice at that time that the founder is trying to do everything, or the founder meaning founder group. But as you go to the Series A stage, we would like to see whether it is now ready to be handed over to a sales team and a marketing team and have them start selling. And during those times, when the company, and that's where the Series A funding typically happens. And during that time, what we like to see is that, okay, can the founder and the senior management team put together repeatable processes? And that includes, obviously, a process to hire some of the best people, bring them on with a missionary approach, and onboard them correctly, And once they're onboarded, really kind of in every function, right? Be it marketing ops, sales ops, customer success ops, and obviously R&D, you have repeatable processes. That means that the pipeline is being generated properly. And the ratios of conversion at every different stage. And the sales team are able to take what the marketing team provides them, talk to them, get them on board as customers. And once you bring them as customers, make them successful, which is the job of the customer success team. So this is what we see in the Series A stage. And in Series B stage, what we try to look for is whether this can be scaled up. Like, you have metrics like magic number, you have metrics like burn multiple, etc. I'm not too keen on choosing one function, one metric and optimizing for it. Every company is different. So you got to choose the right metric for the right company. But once you have chosen that, you make sure that, you can continuously quarter by quarter hit those numbers. And that's when you put Series B plus financing to kind of scale up those repeatable processes. So this is kind of how I see the journey going from those really early days to being a respectable enterprise company.
So many times it seems like, just listening to you, that founders think that their third person should be a salesperson. But when you hire a salesperson, you get their process rather than your business process. And I think the real thing we need to hear at seed level is really understanding. Sometimes you might have heard the word customer persona, which is the ideal customer profile. Having real intimate knowledge is something that we can't shortchange, and that the more you can do that and serve with your differentiation, then you can be on that roadmap for follow-on funding and all of that. Really, really great insights. I'm so grateful to have you as part of our community, and I'm sure there are many, many ways we're going to weave you in continually to help support our growth strategy and all of that. For our audience here, I have some really great news. We are starting an actual cohort program in March at Innovation Square called Think Entrepreneurship. Think Entrepreneurship examines how entrepreneurs translate new ideas or processes into practical use in the form of products, markets, and services, concepts, or systems. The practice of entrepreneurship requires an understanding of different business paradigms and the ability to frame a value proposition. And so sometimes before ideation, people need experience in what is entrepreneurship. So I have room for 12 participants, and I'd love to have anyone who's wanting to dip their toe in entrepreneurship to join me in this program. It's 24 hours, 7 days in March. And I want to thank in particular Evan Galina at Innovation Square for hosting Think Entrepreneurship. That is our program for today. I am so glad you are all part of Think, Build, Launch with our conversation today. I'd also like to thank Impellant Ventures, NextCore, Upstate Venture Connect, Ames Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of Rochester for your collaboration. I also want to acknowledge our producer, Scott Fitzgerald, here at RockVox Studio. If you want to be a part of building this bridge between Rochester, New York, and the Silicon Valley, or be part of Think Entrepreneurship, connect with me, Jennifer at marlaccelerator.com. Please subscribe to our program, follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you for joining us.